Access was appointed by President Trump as a senior advisor to the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Always happy to bring back Kari Lake. We love our Kari Lake. Kari, really good to have you. So now you tell us you found some waste, fraud, and abuse at USAGM. Tell us about that, please.
Well, you don't have to walk far in Washington, D.C. I mean, you can close your eyes and bump into waste, fraud, and abuse. It's around every corner, in every building, in every agency. I happen to be overseeing one of the most corrupt agencies. It's a small agency that many people have never heard of, U.S. Agency for Global Media. They have maybe heard of some of its outlets, Office of Cuba Broadcasting, Voice of America, and they've got grantees, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, Middle East Broadcasting Network, OTF. Lots of different areas where American taxpayer dollars are flowing in and we're not getting something worthwhile out, or it's flowing into the pockets of people who shouldn't be taking that money. And so we've been uncovering a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse, but more importantly, we've been here effectuating President Trump's March 14th executive order to shrink down the bureaucracy of the federal government. And one of the agencies, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, the one that I oversee, he asked in that executive order for us to shrink it down to its minimum size allowable by law. It's called the statutory minimum. And I have been working diligently to make that happen since March 14, even though we've had numerous lawsuits lodged against us. We're still working hard. And today we announced massive terminations of the workforce. I am happy to report that we have successfully cut the workforce by 85% in this agency today, issuing RIF notices, as they're called, reduction in force notices, to roughly about 640 folks. And earlier we had announced, terminations of many other folks who work at this agency. And I'll be honest, there's some really good people who work at this agency. Unfortunately, the agency's been run in such a corrupt manner that it's made it impossible to salvage the agency. And that's why President Trump wants this agency to be deleted. I think there's a way to take some of the assets that are strong and good and find a new home for them. But as it is right now, this is rotten to the core, and it cannot be salvaged in its current form.
You know, it's fascinating, and I'm not sure everyone really understands the role of the whole the umbrella company, but also the group or the Voice of America. Like it's really intended to promote capitalism and democracy around the world. I would almost call it quasi-propaganda, but so what? There's so much negative propaganda coming up to us. And the point I'm trying to make is you walked in there and there was massively staffed with liberals where their voice was representing America from a very, very liberal perspective, right?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned what the focus of this agency is. It is to tell America's story abroad to the world. And as I said, the American taxpayers pay for this. And so the product that should be going out to the world should be talking about the amazing, amazing country that we live in. And it should be aligned with what our foreign policy is. But in many cases, it hasn't done that over the years. As a matter of fact, there's instances where we've put out anti-American programming, where we put out programming that has bolstered our adversaries, where we've, believe it or not, hired people who are foreign asset spies. It's really egregious what's happened over the years.
You came in, and not only do they lean severely left at the time, they're actually foreign assets that were being paid by American taxpayers to put out anti-American propaganda with our own radio waves.
Yeah, very, very shoddy history of doing background checks on the people that have been hired. And in many cases, they have created a national security risk for our entire country. I plan to go into great detail about this on Wednesday when I appear before the House Foreign Affairs Committee to talk about the spies, the lies, the mismanagement of this agency. It's shocking the risk they have put our country in by their background checks that, even though they were warned, they weren't doing them properly. They weren't vetting people properly. Now, this agency hires an exorbitant number of foreign nationals from countries that are hostile toward America. So it's really imperative that background checks are done in accordance with the law and in accordance with what law enforcement and intelligence says we need to do. And that wasn't done for a decade or more at this agency, opening us up to potentially hundreds or more spies coming into our country. And I'm going to go into that on Wednesday morning when I appear before the House Foreign Affairs Committee. This agency is rotten. It's a tangled mess. And to be honest, there's no way to salvage it in its current form. And I think that's why President Trump understood that and asked for us to bring it down to its statutory minimum. Whatever the applicable law requires, we boil it down to that. And then let's work to find if there is something salvageable, find a home for that.
Restaff this thing, Kari. I mean, it's so important to get the right tone, the right voice on the Voice of America and the various other entities, the way you push out the American dream and ideals to the rest of the world, make democracy, front and center on all of it. Yeah, we need that. But that voice is very, very powerful. Those people listen to that. Yeah, go ahead. Final thought, if you don't mind.
I should clarify something, though. President Trump initially had wanted me to be the director of Voice of America. And we learned that this agency had been Trump-proofed. I mean, they made it impossible for me to get into that position where I could go in and try to turn Voice of America around. That's a job that you do have control editorially over what's being put out. Unfortunately, it would take 7 people being confirmed by the Senate for me to get into that role. And so the administration instead made me the senior advisor. So in my role as senior advisor, I don't have a say over what they put out editorially. But here's something really sad. Very few people do. This is an agency that thinks they're independent, that thinks they can run on their programming anything they want. So if they put something out that's anti-American, if they put something out that supports a dangerous regime, there's nothing that I can do. I can't pick up the phone and tell them don't do that, or they can sue me for firewall infringement. This is how backwards the agency is. Even if they put something out that was damaging to our foreign policy, Secretary Rubio couldn't pick up the phone and call Voice of America and say, please knock it off, you're hurting us.
That's crazy.
That's how backwards this agency is.
Imagine, I mean,
that's
you
why
literally
it's rotten,
have
that's why it needs to be reworked.
On broadcast media, and cable, not necessarily digital, but on cable, you literally have to be careful of every word that comes out of your mouth, because the various bodies that listen to everything that's being said on our airways may come down and fine you or bounce you off TV. But we could actually have a liberal propagandist putting out negative stuff about America, and there's nothing that the Secretary of State could do about it. This is crazy.
Yeah, and they have a firewall protection where they could sue anybody who tries to say, hey, don't do that. I mean, they could go full on, totally rogue, anti-American, and it would be next to impossible for me, the president, anybody, a congressman, a senator.
When bad people take over countries and they just go in, number one, they take over the military. And then the next thing they do, they get to the media. They get right to those towers that are putting out the various propaganda and the points of view. So very, very important. Kari, love to get you back very, very soon. Thank you for saving American taxpayers a heck of a lot of money. Thank you, Kari Lake.
That's right. They're spending a lot of money on this agency. Thank you, Eric.